Welcome to another video in Learn to Excel series brought to you by Chemical Engineering Life. In the previous video, we looked at how you can use the VLOOKUP function in order for you to extract different pieces of information from a huge data set. In this video, we are going to look at the horizontal lookup, also known as the HLOOKUP function, which essentially allows you to do the exact same thing as a VLOOKUP, but on a data that has been set up horizontally, like as you can see on the screen right now. So just like you can see right now, we have the fruit names in row 1, the price in row 2, expiration date in row 3, and the origin in row 4. Now the data has been set up horizontally, right, in different rows in comparison to being set up in different columns. And what we want Excel to do is that we want Excel to tell us what is the price, the expiration date, and the origin for the fruit that we want to know. So what we'll do is we write fruit, we write the price, we write the expiration, and then we write the origin. And we will search for apple right here. And that is what you can do using the HLOOKUP function. Now the HLOOKUP function looks something like this. And just like in mathematics, every time you're trying to run a function, you need to put some inputs into it, right? Because Excel also needs to know what it is that you're looking for, where it is that it should look for, and what it is that you want to get out of it. So the first thing that you need to tell Excel is the lookup value. That is the value that you want Excel to search for in the row. That will be this row, this value right here, an apple. Then you need to define the data set for which you want Excel to search for the variable. And now by default, every time you select the data set, Excel will search for this value in the very first row by default. So that means that now that we have selected this data set, Excel will be searching for apple in this row in the very top. If our variable was stored in this row, then you should have made your data set like this. But now since it's in row 1, then we define our data set just like we have done now. Then the second thing is that Excel will be searching for the variable in this. Then Excel needs to know that if there is a hit, where is the value stored which you would like to get as return. So for example, if apple is right here, where is the price stored? And then the price is stored in row 2. So this is our row 1, then this will be our row 2. So we'll write the number 2 there. And then we write false. And false means that we want to get an exact match. What we search for here, Excel should get exactly this value in this row. Likewise, we now search for the expiration date. Once again, the VLOOKUP value remains the same. There. And then our data set remains the same. But now the expiration date is stored in the third row from the very first row, right? So this will be row 1, row 2, and row 3. So now we write the number 3. And once again, we search for false because we want to get the exact match. And then we just change the number type right here so we get the actual date. Finally, for the origin country, we once again search for this. I define my table, row 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now it's the number 4. And then you get the false there. So now we have set up 3 different HLOOKUP functions. And now what we'll do is that we'll check if it actually works the way it should. So let's search for oranges. It costs $12. That's correct. It expires on 10th of February. That is correct. It is from Spain, so that is completely perfect. Let's search for melon. That will be 28. That will be 12th of February, and China. So that is perfect as well. How about avocado? 25, 15 Denmark. That is perfect. And then let's search for blackberry. $55, $55, 18 February in Singapore. So our HLOOKUP function works as it should. And that is essentially how you can use the HLOOKUP function in your dataset. But if, let's say, we search for something that does not exist in this data. Let's say you search for watermelon. Then you get an error, right? Because it doesn't exist in the dataset. So we'll change it back to apple. At the same time, let's say you add watermelon in your data and it costs $55, expires on 20th of February, and it is from Norway. Even now, if I search for watermelon, it will not give me a hit, but instead you will have to go in, edit the formula, and expand your data set to include the new addition that you have added. It's always a good idea to already when you're setting up the formula and you know that you will be adding new things along the way, it's a good idea to cover as far as possible, because then that way you're covered. If someone even adds a new value, let's say we add dragon fruit, dragon fruit for $60, and then if you search it here, then it will be already included in your dataset. So therefore you won't end up having a formula that only covers half of the dataset and not the entire set. So that's the first thing that you need to remember. The second thing, which is more of a limitation in the HLOOKUP, is the fact that you can only go from top to bottom. That means that I can search for apple and I can get the price. I can't search for the number 8 and get apple as a return. If I would like to do that, then I would have to move the price row on top of the fruit row. So Excel only starts from the HLOOKUP function starts from the top and all the way to the bottom. And at the same time, then I'll just change this back to Apple there. Another thing is that you need to remember that if you have any duplicates in your row, for example, apple. Now we have 2 apples in our data set. We have an apple right here, and we have an apple right here. Excel goes from left to the right. So therefore, as soon as Excel gets a hit, it reads off the corresponding values in the HLOOKUP function. So if I'm searching for apple, it will give me this first. If I delete it, then Excel will give me this data set. So therefore, if you have any duplicates in your data set, it's a good idea for you to avoid using HLOOKUP function, because in that scenario, you will only be getting the very first hit and not the second one. Another way to work around it is that you give your variables unique names. So for example, we change one of the apple to golden apple. In that case, there's only one golden apple in your entire data set, which will then allow you to get the data that you are searching for. So that is what you need to remember. Another thing, and that is a quite important one, is that you need to remember that this number that you see here, where we define the row number, that number has nothing to do with these numbers right here. For example, if I was to move my data set down, so now we have 2 blank rows in the very top. The formula will remain the same. This number will not change. The reason it will not change because this number is defined as the row from the very first row defined in your data set. So that means that the price is still the second row from the fruit row. The expiration date is still the third row from your fruit row. And the origin country row is still the fourth row from the fruit. So Excel knows that that Excel needs to search for the variable in this row and then return you the value, which is 1, 2, 3, 4th row away from this variable. So don't get confused that these numbers has nothing to do with these row numbers right here. There. And that essentially is what the HLOOKUP function is and how it works. So this was a very simple example just to give you a brief understanding of how you can use it and how you can apply it on different problems. Now let's move on to a chemical engineering problem. Because if you have ever worked with Aspen or Pro2 or any other simulation program, you may have noticed that the data that you get out of the program looks very much like this. Your unit operations and the energy input or the output or the cost and everything is normally set up in different rows instead of columns, which is kind of annoying at times, but it is what it is. So therefore, being able to use HLOOKUP function can be very helpful as a chemical engineer, especially if you're working with one of these simulation programs. Because what we want to do is that we want to search for the ID and we want to get the energy output. So I will search for H1 and then we use the HLOOKUP function, and then I will search for this number right there. And now as you'll see that I am only defining my data for these two rows. That means that Excel needs to search for the ID in this row, and Excel will only search for the variable in the first row of your dataset by default. And then I want Excel to give me the result or the value in the second row from the searched row. That will be number 2, and then we write a false. So let's play around with it. So we have C1, a C2, the first heat exchanger, the second heat exchanger. What about a flash tank? Then you see, then you will get the energy output right away. Let's say you are working with this data set and you are trying to compare the energy inputs for different unit operations. Then you can actually run the VLOOKUP function parallelly for different variables. So for example, you click here, and do remember every time you copy paste the formulas, remember to fix the data set, right? So we'll move it back. And let's say we want to compare the first heat exchanger with the second heat exchanger. So you can do that as well, and you can make as many HLOOKUPs as you like. That's not there's no limitation on that, because the HLOOKUP function is not, it's only looking up for that variable in the data set, and it's not making any changes to the data itself. And let's say you say that this is still not enough, and in the program you get too many rows and you also want to get the equipment type. Then what you can do is that you can move the ID from the second row to the first row, because like I said, the HLOOKUP function only goes from the top till the bottom. So what we want to do is we want to search for the ID, we want to search for the equipment, and then we write the energy. So let's say we write C1 and then we write the HLOOKUP. You're searching for that value. We define our data set, and now we want the equipment is stored in the second row, so you write the number 2 and then you write false. At the same time, we write another HLOOKUP function. We are searching for that value. We define the we define the table, and then you're searching in row 3 and then you write false, so that we get an exact match. So now let's try with H1. We know it's a heater and we know the energy input is 36. Let's try HX1. That is a what is the HX1? That is a heat exchanger and that is 17. What about FT1? That is a flash tank and the energy is 60. So as you can see, it actually fits with the data set that you have in the top. And there is no limitation. You can have a data that goes all the way up until the 1000th column, and you can have it go down as low as possible. The only important thing for you to remember is that you define your data set properly, and at the same time you define and you tell Excel that what row it is that you want the data to be returned. As long as you do that, the HLOOKUP function will work exactly how you want it to. And that was all for this video, and I really hope that you learned something new today which you can use in your everyday life and in your everyday career. And also do remember to visit www.ChemEnggLife.com, where you can sign up for online Excel courses which can help you further excel in your career and in data analysis. And if you have not done so already, then do remember to subscribe to ChemEnggLife channel for more videos on chemical engineering and other series. Thank you and have a great day.